So that's what struck an idea to me, was like, listen, in this age, we have our cell phones, right? If the number not stored in your phone, chances of you answering it, especially if it's a different area code, is slim to none. Because we know, like, it's so bad that we don't even remember people's numbers anymore because it's stored in our phone, right? And so
I'm guilty.
Yeah. Right. We all are, man. And so that's what struck and said, you know what? I need to start to try to send text messages out to people, because you can ignore a phone call, but you won't ignore a text.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Jamel Gibbs. Welcome to another podcast episode. And today we have a very special guest. I'm actually very excited about this particular guest, primarily because he's doing something very different from what the average investor is doing in today's market. And this is a strategy that I've implemented, but not on the capacity that he has. So I'm actually eager to hear what he has to say as well. I use what he's going to talk about as a follow-up sequence to my direct mail campaigns and things like that when it comes to finding leads. And if you've been around real estate investing for any amount of time, direct mail is a really good way to generate leads. But I see a lot of newer investors these days moving away from the old school strategies like bandit signs and direct mail and moving more into modern day technology in order to be able to maximize their lead flow while minimizing the amount of time that it takes to actually get the leads. So our special guest today is probably one of the first guys that has been talking about this particular strategy that we're going to talk about today. And he's also a really good friend of mine. We've been friends for, I want to say at least 10 years, Chris, about 10 years. And, we've been a part of a group together. We talk all the time. So I really thought it was important to get him on the line to share what he's doing in his business right now, so that you guys can take what he's doing and start implementing it into your business as well. But without further ado, let's welcome Chris Bruce to the call. What's going on, my man?
And Jamel, I appreciate you bringing me on this podcast, man. I love doing these, man. And, anytime you got a phone call, you hit me about anything, man, I'm on it.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah. Over the years, man, we've been able to share a lot of things together, a lot of information. You're obviously a wealth of knowledge. I wanted to get you on the line because I know that anybody listening to this podcast right now is going to benefit from this information. Now, just to kind of set the tone as to where we're actually going with this podcast right now. So, for those of you doing direct mail, if you're doing, maybe some cold calling, these are all things that Chris and we've talked about these things over the years. Over the last, I want to say 2 to 3 years, the game has absolutely changed when it comes to finding motivated sellers. So, before, where direct mail and cold calling was a big thing to utilize in your real estate investing business, over the past couple of years, you really needed to adapt. And you see a lot of newer investors, they're using things like ringless voicemail. I recently had Chris Chico on a call where we spoke about pay-per-click advertising, which has always been around. Well, not always, but probably over the past 10 years or so. But Chris Chico just mastered it, right? And then you have email. A lot of newer investors, that's actually one of my strategies that I use as well, email blasts. But today we're going to talk about text messaging. It's really a fantastic way to find deals. I was talking to another investor the other day, and he was just talking about how he can actually spend, somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 to $600 to get a deal. And I'm using text messaging, but more on a follow-up sequence type of, using a follow-up sequence type of campaign. I'm not using it on the same capacity, at the same capacity that you are and some of the other guys are. So I'm actually eager to hear what you got to say as well, because I'm going to, honestly, I'm going to rip off and duplicate what you're doing and apply it into my business as well. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how you got started in real estate, and then we'll jump into the nitty gritty of this call.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my first introduction to real estate was actually 2006. There was an opportunity that came about from my dad. He had told me about an opportunity for me to buy real estate as a landlord. So I could buy this property. It was in Detroit, Michigan, on the east side of Detroit on Beaconsfield. I used my credit, which I didn't even know I got approved. But, you know, back then, if you had a pulse, you could get approved, right?
Yeah.
So I got approved for this mortgage. I actually had a tenant in there, but things didn't work out. Long story short, the market crashed, right? I lost that property. Fast forward 3 years later, I came across a guy that was advertising how to take an opportunity on making money off foreclosure. So I was like, what? I just foreclosed on the house, right? I don't have any credit. I don't have any cash. Let me see what he's talking about. And so I went ahead and I borrowed the money from my daughter's mom to invest in his program, which was $1,000, which I didn't have. And this, Jamel, man, this was back in the day, but DVDs and workbooks. You had to get them joints mailed to your house.
Yeah, it was funny because I used to have a course back in 2009 called the Real Estate Repo Riches, and I made that into a physical product. And we used to sell that for about $9.97, but that was DVDs and all of that stuff. And I want to say 2 years later, that stuff was out the window. Everybody was online, membership sites, man.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. So I got everything shipped to me, went through everything. I immediately took action. That's one thing about me. Whenever I get some information, I have to immediately act on it. But when you immediately act on certain things, sometimes you make a lot of mistakes.
Yep. Same here, man. Same here. That's how I got started as well, man. I just kind of, I've been doing this since 2002. When I started, I jumped right in. I didn't know about coaches and home study courses and stuff. I'm like you, man. Just do it, kind of figure it out as you go on, make the mistakes, correct it, and then keep going.
Exactly.
So I respect that, man.
Yeah. So when I did that, I ended up putting 26 properties under contract and I had to back out every single one of them.
That's a good problem to have, man. Why did you have to back out all of them?
And this is across 3 month span. This is not like all one. Yeah. No, this is 3 month span. So what it was just like, I was learning, like, even though I was doing the stuff they told me in the course, there would be one thing I would try to do my own way. I would miss the step, right? So it would be one, I would go into get a property in the contract in an area where nobody wants properties. I would, overpay for a property at a certain, area where people are buying houses for 30 and I'm telling them I'm gonna give them 35 and I'm trying to sell it for 40, just making just dumb, ricky mistakes. And so I made so many of those mistakes. Actually, one time I almost lost $1,000. Like, this was back in the day where with a realtor, so I was buying properties on MLS, right? So I would put a contract in on a Thursday or a Wednesday. I would get my set off there about Thursday evening, and Thursday evening to Friday, I had the whole weekend to try to sell the house, put banner signs out. If I didn't sell the house by Monday, I was back on the contract.
That's hilarious, man.
Because I had the 7-day inspection period. So I was like, I got to move fast because they're going to want their deposit by Monday.
Yeah. Hey, at least you had the guts to put it on the contract, man. A lot of people don't even have the guts to do that. So that's big for you, man. So you, I
did a lot of that, man. A lot of that. So fast forward anyway, finally the 27th one, I closed it and made $5,000. And I was like, okay, finally. And that's when I started actually like getting into learning more about marketing and things like that.
What's so funny about that story? So you had enough, you was aggressive enough to put 26 houses on the contract, but it seems to me, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me, but you still had a little bit of fear that maybe you were going to get sued, or maybe you were going to lose some type of money if you didn't close on that house. So you decided to back out while you still had enough time. Is that right?
Absolutely. Fear was still there because again, one at a time. So what I would do is I would take a picture of my check and it'll be written out as a deposit and I would send it. One time a realtor was like, yo, we don't need a picture of it.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Yeah, right. So I sent it in. They were getting ready to cash it. I had to make up a fake inspection from a fake contractor in order for me to back out of a deal. They was about to take my $1,000. I have $1,000 in my account.
Yeah, I think we all did something crazy like that. I remember, and it's not necessarily illegal or anything like that, but what we used to do when we made offers, we sent a copy of the check. So we had, let's say, one generic check that we would write $500 on. And this is when we were doing bank-owned properties heavy. We would have the one check. All the realtor asked for was a copy of the check. So we would fax them a copy of the same check. And we just keep pumping out that same check. Yeah. And then what would happen is once we got the offer accepted, then we would send in a real check. So we got the deal. Gotcha. But that's how we used to do it.
Okay. Yeah, I was doing it all wrong, man. Trying to beat the system. Yeah. The system always beat me.
Yeah. I mean, hey, that's how you learn, man. That's how we made a lot of mistakes back then. Obviously that's why information like this is so important. Podcasts and YouTube videos, these platforms are so important to teach newer investors what not to do. Exactly. So we kind of grandfathered the game a little bit for the younger generation. Not saying that we're old, man. I'm only 30. I'll be 39 in a couple of months. And I know you're a little younger than me, 35. Yeah. So we kind of pioneered the game. We started young, but we understand what it's going to take to get to that next level. That's why I love talking to guys like you and, guys like me who obviously have been around the game for a little while, and we could share what not to do. Exactly. So that, you could work on what's actually working. So how did you segue into where you are today? So let's start at like 2009. That's around the time you said you started?
Yes, I started. Yep.
And then you were doing REOs back then. Mm-hmm. And then from there, how did you segue into motivated sellers? Sure.
So around 2010, towards the end of it, I would say middle of 2010. This is when I actually quit my job. This was May 7th, 2010. I walked out my job, cold turkey, and I was like, okay, I got to do this stuff full time. I had no money stacked or nothing like that. I just said, listen, I'm gonna get out the mud and figure this stuff out. So
out the window.
Yeah, man. So at that time, I was educating myself a lot, and I was seeing that there was a lot of people talking about going direct to seller. Like, there's only so much that you get from my area, because at that time, Lee Kearney was the biggest thing smoking. So there was only literally scraps in my market left that he didn't pick up, because he was buying 40 houses a month at that time. And so I started, okay, I need to learn how to do marketing. And so I did invest in another training course, a little cheap, $97 course. And I started to learn, educate myself on marketing. So back then, like you said earlier, direct mail worked, right? So I learned how to write up a letter, and put a stamp on it and send out direct mail. I learned about postcards. And I started doing a lot of direct mail. I even did banner sign marketing as well. So that was the things that I started to do. And it was just a different animal, because with REOs, it was a clear cut, just make an offer, bam, you get it accepted or not. Here I had to learn. Yeah, I had to learn to talk to people. I had to really learn
Don't forget you won a Hummer too.
Yeah, I won a Hummer too at the end. That helped a lot. That did. So at the end of 2010, when I did win that Hummer, me showing up to owners' houses, that set the bar high.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy's he really buys houses.
Yeah. Definitely, man. So, I mean, like you said, there were some big players. Lee is still actually a pretty big player on a different scale these days. Right. But, there were some big players back then. That didn't deter you. That didn't stop you. One thing I will say about Chris, guys, one thing I absolutely noticed for sure, this guy buys so much information. He's a part of so many groups and things like that, masterminds. He invests into his education, but he doesn't only invest into the education. He applies what he's learning. So I saw the progression from, over the past, let's say 7 years of him buying the information. And then, everybody, if you're in real estate investing, I'm willing to bet that you've probably seen a Chris Bruce ad on Facebook or on some other platform, maybe Instagram or something like that. It's because he gets the information, but then he applies it. That's a key thing that you want to take away from Chris. Apply what you learn. As I've mentioned on one of the first podcasts, education without action means nothing. You have to take action. That's where, making the mistakes, not being afraid to, Chris put 26 houses on the contract without even knowing what he was doing. So just, think about the information, take the information that you're gaining from calls like this, but apply. Yeah. That's where that application is where it's really going to be the game changer for you.
You know what I think that the school messed us up, Jamel, is that we got penalized for failing.
Mm-hmm.
So in turn,
powerful, man.
Don't want to go out there and make a mistake.
That's right.
Right. So that's why they're afraid to take action, because it's like, I've been penalized for 18 years of my life. If I make a mistake, I get graded. Anything under 90%, right, is either average or is not good enough, right? So like, we look at life and we try to go do this entrepreneur real estate thing, and we're like, if I make a mistake, if I say something, I'm penalized. I failed, and I think that psychology in our brains that's been working for 18 years in school has messed us up. And that's why a lot of people don't take action.
Fail forward. You got to fail. So you have to fail in business. It's counterintuitive to what you already know and what you learn from school. So you have to fail. Even if you have the knowledge, you still got to fail some. You're going to fail.
Yep.
But that failure should lead you to more experience, more success. Fail forward. That's what you want to do.
Absolutely.
So you started jumping into motivated sellers.
Yes.
And you were driving around in a nice Hummer. What was it? An Ace 2?
Ace 2 Hummer. Yep.
Ace 2. And that helped you get some deals.
Yeah.
So you started tapping. What were you doing back then to find these motivated sellers?
Yeah. So I was doing a lot of like absentee owner mailers. That was like a big thing back then. It's crazy because now, everybody and their mama's doing absentee owners. That's like the main list that they tell you, right? But it worked back then. I mean, you could send out 1,000 postcards and get a deal. So it was very simple back then. The competition wasn't as crazy. It wasn't as super competitive as it is now.
You send out triple or quadruple that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, you got investors.
It's saturated because everybody's an investor.
Everybody's doing it. There's people that sending 50,000 mailers a month. It's crazy.
Yep.
But back then, like I said, you could do 1,000. Every 1,000 I sent, every 1,000 to 2,000, I always got a deal. Always. I never not got a deal. So it was crazy. And it was so good that what I learned is that the stuff that I was doing in this market, with the internet increasing and social media coming on about that got started to get big, I was able to take the same information, apply it in different markets. So the first market I jumped in that wasn't in my local market was Orlando. I did a deal there. And I was like, man, I can actually do this in virtual markets. I don't even have to physically be at a property to close on it and make money off of it. And that, Jamel, just had my mind blown with like the possibilities.
Yep. So now, fast forward. So you were doing direct mail. You figured out virtual wholesaling. And nowadays, like we were talking about earlier, you have these newer marketing methods where you don't even have to send. You literally get a list today, you can skip trace the list, upload the list, and have the phone ringing within the next hour.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, man.
It's crazy because again, you look at back in the day when door knocking, direct mail, things like that. There was things. There were the reason why, because there was no software. The technology hadn't. It hadn't yet got there, right? So there was no, even when it comes to lists, there's so many different list brokers now. You can literally pay a monthly fee to get access to these lists. Before, that was never available.
Yep.
You had to go to like a list source to, purchase lists and things like that. But now since the technology has increased, there's a lot of different softwares out there. We're able to go out and get like I remember skip tracing. You remember back in the day, skip tracing, that was not
no. I didn't skip trace back then. I didn't have to. But since things become, it's obviously more competitive these days. So you got to, data is king these days, man.
It is. So
it's just as good as cash.
As the internet grown, it just started to get more opportunities for us. And so one of the things that I started to notice, because I wasn't doing cold calling back then. I kind of got into cold calling, I would say around 2000. It was late. It was like 2016. I started doing cold calling. I started hiring Filipinos and we're doing cold calling and things. And 2018, January, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. But January 18, things started to shift. It was like, I don't know what happened, but my cold calling was not as effective. We were still getting a couple of deals, but it was taking way more calls. And really what it was that people weren't even answering their phone. I started to look at the data and say, okay, we dialed 100 dials. Why have we only talked to 22 people? You know, then it started getting worse. It started getting like, yo, we called 100 people and now only talked to 14 people. We like, yo, this is not getting better. So we need to figure something out. And so what happened was I was actually on a date with my fiance. We were out eating some tacos or whatever. And I remember there was a friend that called me. At this time, I didn't know who the friend. I didn't know it was a friend. It was a number that was not saved in my phone, and they called me. So I didn't answer it. I was like, I don't know who this is. I'm not answering. It could be a bill collector or whatever, right? I'm not answering. So I didn't answer. But 2 minutes later, it was one of my friends. He texted me. He was like, "Yo, this such and such. I just changed my number. It had been a long time since we had talked." And I was like, "Damn!" As soon as I knew it was one of my homies, I instantly I walked out the restaurant and called him. And I was like, damn, I'm so glad that he texted me, because I would have never called that number back because I didn't know who the number was or whatever. So that's what struck an idea to me, was like, listen, in this age, we have our cell phones, right? If the number not stored in your phone, chances of you answering it, especially if it's a different area code, is slim to none. Because we know, it's so bad that we don't even remember people's numbers anymore because it's stored in our phone, right? And so
I'm guilty.
Yeah. Right. We all are, man. And so that's what struck and said, you know what? I need to start to try to send text messages out to people, because you can ignore a phone call, but you won't ignore a text.
That's right. The response rate on a text message is ridiculously fun. It's kind of funny because, we've been around marketing. So not only are we real estate investors, but we're also, we are marketers.
Right.
And we help people with information as well. So,
yep.
I know that we do webinars and stuff like that. I remember we're probably going back to 2008,
okay,
2009 or so, where I found out about this company called easytexting.com. And in order to get more people, because we were marketing through email, we still build up our email list today. It all comes full circle today, even in your real estate business. But we would drive people to a webinar via email. But then what will happen is the response rate eventually started dropping as more and more people started doing that. So what do? We started implementing text messaging as a reminder that the webinar is going to be live in, let's say, 20 minutes. So we utilize multiple channels in order to be able to do that. So it's all marketing. It's marketing 101. Mm-hmm. Reach out, and a certain percentage of people will eventually bite.
Right.
What I like what you're doing with the text messaging is you're utilizing it rather than you're probably using it as a follow-up as well. But what you're doing is reaching out to them through a channel that everyone else is not even thinking about.
Yeah.
And that's obviously, so you're staying ahead of the game, you know, so you're doing the opposite of what everyone else is doing to get a better result.
Right.
And eventually people will jump on to text messaging and something else will come up. But the object is to know what's coming. Like ringless voicemail, when that came out, a couple years ago, everybody wanted to know what was ringless voicemail. Now it's so easy to get your phone ringing with ringless voicemail that you have state laws that are starting to be passed, starting to prevent that type of marketing. not saying that, I mean, I don't think it's going anywhere, but I think it will be regulated
Absolutely.
over time. But text messaging is, again, it's one of those things like Ringler's voicemail a couple of years ago. It's
Yep.
like what there's one social media guy talks about, Gary V. He says TikTok, right? TikTok
Yeah, he talking a lot about that right now.
is the new thing,
Yeah.
right? Text messaging to motivated sellers is kind of like TikTok right now.
Right.
It's the future.
Yep.
That's kind of where you want to be with it.
Yeah.
So powerful stuff, man. So let's talk about how the average investor right now can get started. Like, let's keep it simple. Let's act like somebody's brand new to this whole marketing thing.
Okay.
And let's give them maybe a 3-step process. If they wanted to start text messaging right now to start driving leads, what do you think it's going to take for them to be able to do that?
Yeah. So the biggest thing, and I like that you made that you bridged the gap on the way text messaging is right now compared to like a TikTok, because the challenge that people face is that there still aren't a lot of affordable softwares, or the technology is not as prevalent as like Ringler's voicemail. Like you said, Ringler's voicemail, there's so many people have softwares and things like that. A lot of them are affordable for the average person that's just getting started, but there isn't a lot of text messaging softwares out there. I mean, maybe you might know a few, I'm not sure. But anyways, one is for the investor to go out and get a list. That's very important.
What type of, now let's dig into that a little bit. What type of list? What type of list would somebody, what's the best, the highest possible, we're trying to help somebody get a deal.
Right, exactly. The highest possible list, and I really, I kind of took this from you, but kind of like twisted a little bit, is the one program that I love that you had was the property umbrella, right? And so what I looked at is vacants is sort of like a property umbrella type of list, because there's so many different motivations that come from a vacant property. And so a new investor starting off, your ideal list is going to be a vacant property list.
Right.
There is a website that is very, 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 I'm trying to remember, I think it's Vacant Addresses.
Vacant House. I know Cam has one. I'll link it in the description box if you're on YouTube.
Okay.
I'll link it. And I know Cam has one that I consistently use myself.
Okay.
So it's Vacant House.
In there. Yeah.
The Vacant House data feed. I'll link that below. Shout out to Cam Dunlap for putting that together.
Yeah, absolutely. You can just use that to get a list of vacant properties. Take that vacant list, and then you can manually send out text messages if you want. If you don't have a software, now granted, most cell phone carriers are going to block, so you're gonna need a software at some point.
So one other thing, I was talking to Cam back we're probably going back 2 months now when I was out in Tampa. Mm-hmm. I think you were supposed to be there, but you didn't. Yeah. But we were at this mastermind, and Cam was, we were talking about how powerful vacant houses are. And I was just telling him he had no idea I was using his software, but I've been using it for several years. And I think I spoke to you when I first did. Yeah. But one thing I will add to what you're saying is when it comes to pulling your leads, Cam's software does allow you to pull phone numbers as well. But what I'm going to recommend you do, and I use skip tracing. I use Skip Genie. I'm not sure who you use.
Good. I like
Genie. So Skip Genie has a service like $100 a month, and then it's like 25 cents per record, or you can pay $1.50 per record for a lower rate. You got to check it out. I'll link Skip Genie below as well. But Skip Genie, in my opinion, the cheaper the The cheaper it is to pull your records, the in my opinion, again, and I'm just offering my humble opinion, the cheaper it is to pull your records, the less valuable the list is going to be. So what I recommend, at 25 cents, where someone else may charge you, let's say 4 cents to pull a record, 25 cents, you're going to get something really good. Skip tracing, for those of you who don't know what it is, you know what? Let me let you answer that. So you get the list.
Get the list.
Skip trace the list.
Yeah, skip trace that list, which is skip tracing, guys, is getting a phone number. So what skip tracing really is that it allows them to whatever company they go out and they can pull the data of where you're active. So you basically have to have somebody's owner's name, their address, and then they take that information, run it against the records. These are the same records that a lot of the bill collectors have access to, things like that, to find a phone number for you.
Exactly. So basically, skip tracing is almost like hiring a private investigator to go out and find out where this owner is. That's all skip tracing is. So when you skip trace, what are you pulling?
Yeah. So we pull typically, we get 3 phone numbers minimum.
Perfect.
Get an email address as well.
Perfect. That's what we do.
Yeah, because that way we can test the numbers. Sometimes it might be a landline number. It might be a voice over internet, number, like a Google number or something like that. And then, we'll have a cell phone number a lot of times as well too. Or it may just be 2 mobile numbers. But yeah, we get 3 phone numbers, email address. So then we are allowed to go then and send them. We have our own custom built software that we use. So we get texts for real cheap, like a penny.
Awesome, man. So you pull the list, you skip trace the list. You want at least 3 phone. So you focus on vacant properties.
Vacant properties. Yep.
Free and clear vacants. Yes.
So they don't have to be free and clear. I would say at least at the most, they only have maybe a 20%. So it would say 80% equity. So we like to do 80% equity to free and clear.
80% to free and clear and equity. Okay. So vacant property. I'll link where you can get the vacant properties below in the description box. If you're on YouTube, if you're listening to this on iTunes or some other podcast platform, go to my YouTube page at youtube.com/Jamel Gibbs and look for the video with Chris Bruce's face on it. And what you're going to, if you click on that video and you look in the description box, you'll see all of these links that we're talking about. So we want to get the vacant, we want to get a free and clear or 80% equity to free and clear vacant property lists, vacant property list. We want to take that list. We want to skip trace that list. Step number 2, we want to get at least 3 phone numbers and an email address. Powerful tactic because, and I know exactly why you're doing it because I do it as well.
Yeah.
And then from there, what do you do?
So when we send out a text, so the thing that some people will think is that, okay, well, I can go ahead and try to close the deal through text. Now, disclaimer, I've only closed 1 deal through text where that's the only thing, the communication we did. Out of all the deals that we closed through text, there was only 1 time that we literally, I'm talking about from the initial conversation to making the offer to getting the lockbox code, everything was done through text. That only happened 1 time. It doesn't happen a lot. So what I want people to understand is that, listen, you're not going to make an offer through text. There's no way for you to be able to be on the phone and build hardly any rapport, hear the tonality, or build the trust through a text. The goal of the text is to get a conversation started, to filter out if this person is in a situation where you can be able to help them. Because this is what I like to get wholesalers, especially new ones, to understand. You have a service, and understand that your service is not for everybody.
That's right.
Your service is providing a cash transaction for a homeowner in a fastly, timely manner, right? Without having to pay closing costs, without having to pay commissions. But that service is not for everybody. There's going to be some people that don't need your service because they got money.
Think CarMax. When you think about wholesaling, think about a service like CarMax. CarMax provides a service where they can allow you to unload your car. You may not get what everyone else is offering you, but you'll be able to unload that car and possibly purchase another car.
Well, I like that. I like that.
Wholesaling.
I like that.
No, that's fine, man. We here to share information. That's all it is. But wholesaling is the same thing. Wholesaling is like CarMax. That's all it is.
Yeah.
With wholesaling, you provide a service. Some wholesalers, some real estate investors, quote unquote, such as myself, I provide more than one service.
Right.
You really want to be known for one thing, and then you can kind of in info marketing, we call it upsell, where you can provide other services in addition to your main service. So for me, and I'm kind of skeptical with even mentioning this term on this podcast, but I'm going to mention it anyway because my program is about done. I started implementing something called hybrid wholesaling, and you're going to hear a lot about hybrid wholesaling over the next few weeks from the release of this podcast. It's a term that I made up, and it fits exactly what I do when I provide a service. So whether the seller has no equity or whether the seller has, they're in a situation where, we can negotiate something and make a deal work. So I'm going to get 5 times the deals than the average wholesaler. That's what hybrid wholesaling is. Gotcha. I was skeptical with mentioning it. I'm probably talking about it a little too early. But I trademarked that term hybrid wholesaling because at the end of the day, it's a strategy I've been implementing, which is a hybrid of wholesaling, but allows you to offer more services to the seller. So that's definitely a killer thing. So basically, as a wholesaler, think CarMax. You provide a service to the seller, and it's not for everybody. It's for a certain it's for a specific type of person.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So we pull the list, we skip trace the list, we reach out to the seller. What does that message sound like?
Yeah. So when reaching out to the seller, it's really, we like to the first conversation, make it seem like I'm talking to somebody that I already know. So maybe like, Jamel, hey, how's your day going? And then we wait for a response.
Got you.
Then we say, hey, you wouldn't be in the market to sell your property. You wouldn't, a lot of times in text messages, you wouldn't be interested in selling your property today, would you? And then the conversation, based off of what response we get, we kind of gauge it of what we're going to say after. It's a yes or it's a no, or who is this? We kind of gauge on what we're going to say. And we let them know that we have acquisition people that's doing this, but we let them know that, we're a local investment team. Now, one thing we don't mention our company, and I want everybody to know that the reason why is because you don't know who you may be talking to. I mean, you could be talking
people
to.
People are so happy, man.
They are. So what we always use and we tell our students too is say I'm the city's local investment company.
That's it.
That's why I use. We're a local Tampa investment group. We're a local Philadelphia investment group. Or, local buyer. That's the best what you term to use. That way you don't have to necessarily display or disclose your company at first.
Real broad, real generic.
Real broad, real generic. And so what we're looking for is that something that we might ask them a couple of questions, which is generic stuff like we're verifying how many beds and baths. And then here's where we do that may be different from other people, is that we'll say, okay, there's just a few more questions that we need from you in order to see if this would be a good fit, if we can be able to make an offer on your property. When's a good time for us to be able to get on the phone?
Then you make that transition over. I like that.
Transition.
I like that. Leading right into a phone call. Yeah, I love that.
It has to happen where you get on the phone with them. We want to get on the phone with them right then and there, but that might not be a good time. And sometimes we have people say, yeah, we had a lady one time, she was like, I'm in the doctor's office right now. How about you call me at 5:30? And we was like, fine. We called them then. And that's another thing too. Always set a certain time with the homeowner for anything, even when you're going to make have them sign a contract, or you're going over the contract over the phone, or however you're doing it, always set a date and time. Because if you tell people if it's a conversation where it's like, all right, Jamel, yeah, just call me later, and there's no set time, there's no scheduling, more than likely you're gonna have a very big issue trying to get in contact with that person. They might.
It's true.
So we like to be strict on a certain time, so they know exactly when they're gonna, hear from us.
What we do, I like to, if I'm gonna set an appointment with somebody, I give them two different options. I say, so what works best for you, 2:30 or 3:30, something like that. So then now you have two options.
Gotcha.
Pick one, and then we work it out from there. So I like that. Always set a time, and that way people, once you set a time with people, they tend to be more committed to that time frame anyway. So I like that. Yeah. Now, quick question: have you split test approaching your approach with the motivated seller? So approaching them with the, hey, how are you, versus, hey, this is such and such, we buy houses in a local area, yada, yada, yada type of message.
Yeah, absolutely. We have tested that. And the reason why we start switching it up a little bit and getting more personal is because we were seeing that there's some messages that don't get sent out because they're spam. The carriers are smart. They're literally pulling some of those. So we had to get a little bit personable to kind of throw the carriers off a little bit.
I like that.
And so that's the reason why we start switching it up. Now we have also a lot of softwares will require you to have multiple phone numbers, because you can only send typically in the software that we were using before. I think it was like 100 and I want to say 150. It was like 100 to 150 text messages from that one number is the most you can send out.
Wow.
Anything more than that, you can't send at a blast, pretty much. So we had to switch out, have 5, 6, 7. These softwares have the opportunity for you to have different multiple numbers, so that way, it just switches over, so it doesn't go through spam. But anyways, it's a little technical for people. Just know that we did test that, and like I said, to try to beat them from thinking it's a spam, we go with a more personal question, and we already say their name. That's another thing too. We insert their name in the merge field. So it's like, hey, Chris, how's it going? Hey, Chris, how's your day going? So they're like, oh, because a lot, you're going to always, if you don't know the number and they're texting you and they put your name in it, you're like, who is this?
That's right. I mean, because then you automatically, they want to know who's this person that knows me. That's kind of like a little tactic that I use when it comes to postcards. I have them wondering, I have them thinking. So if I use, let's say, a postcard, I might say something like, hey, I might send out a ringless voicemail, for example. And it may say something like, hey, there's a pink postcard in your mailbox right now. I wanted to let you know about. Go to your mailbox, check it, and then call us back, and we'll talk about that pink postcard. So it's kind of like it's a curiosity approach to it.
And that's the thing. Curiosity
exactly.
is the best in marketing, right?
Exactly. So if you know their name, they're curious. How does this guy know my name? Exactly. I like that, man. So quick question for you. When it comes to, let's say, sending out text messages versus direct mail, I know for direct mail, for the average person, you're going to spend about $1,500 to $2,000 to get a deal these days, right? Maybe a little more because it's so competitive. You might end up $2,000 to $2,500, depending on your market. When it comes to text messaging, how does that differ from the direct mail approach?
Yeah, it's ridiculously cheaper. I mean, we've had time we've spent, $300, $400 to get a deal. I had a lady one time, we cold called her. We sent her a ringing voicemail. She did not respond until we sent her a text. And then we ended up getting that deal and made 20 grand on it. So it, like with text messages, on average for us, we're spending about 500. And now in Tampa, it's about 500 to 600. And some of the smaller markets like Cleveland that we're working on right now, $300, $400. It's crazy. Like, it's ridiculous.
$300 to $400.
Yeah.
And you saying Tampa is
more competitive because there's more people here. It's about $500 to $600 here because there's a lot of people in this market that have
To
called
get a
on
deal,
text
to get a
messages.
contract, you're talking
Yeah,
about.
get a
That's
contract.
crazy, man.
Because with text messages, we only are charged 1 cent.
Right.
So we can send out a blast of text messages, and we got follow-ups and things like that, of course, that comes into play and stuff like that. But yeah, it's significantly cheaper.
Now, who are you using for your tech service?
Yeah, so we have our own white label company
Got it.
called Virtual Biz in a Box. And we because there's a lot of other ones. Lead Sherpa's a good one. I think there's
I know there's Text Magic as well.
yeah,
They're like
there's a couple of them,
4
but
cents. Yeah.
ours allows us. We have our own pricing, so
Mhm.
we're paying 1 cent per text.
What was the name of it again?
Huh?
What was the name of that?
It's called Virtual Biz in a Box.
Virtual Biz in a Box. Do you have a website for it already?
We do, but I can't.
It's not available to the public
Yeah,
yet. Okay.
it's only really available for my private students and my customers right now.
Got it.
We haven't made it available to any like anybody yet. So
Well, be on the lookout for that for
be on the lookout for
future references, guys. So let's recap these 3 steps. So we got get a list.
Mhm.
And when you get that list, you obviously want to focus on free and clear, or at least 20% equity in the property to free and clear. And again, you could check the description box for a link to get started with that. Then you want to skip trace the list. You want to pull at least 3 numbers and also an email address with each customer. Now, understand that you're not going to get 100%. If you got 1,000 leads, you're not going to get 100% phone numbers. You're not going to get, even if you're sending out, let's say, ringless voicemail, you're going to get a percentage of them that's actually going to go through. A good number for me is usually like 70%. If I can hit 70% on a ringless voicemail, I know that I got a good list.
Yep.
And if I get 6, 7, 8% response rate from that, I'm pretty happy. So out of 1,000 leads, we may only have like 700 of them that's, actually quality leads. And then we might get, 40, 50, 60 phone calls per 800. That's about industry standard right now for us, at least.
Yep. Same here.
So pull your list, get the contact information, start texting. Use a simple service. I know Chris's service isn't available yet to the general public. So again, guys, it's not about the information. It's about getting started. If you don't do anything, if you're not willing to invest a little bit of money, Chris just told you, where it takes the average person who's sending out postcards to spend, between $1,500 and $2,500 to get a deal, you can do the same thing between $300 and even $700 in order to get your first deal. Now, let's do some math here. Let's do some simple math.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question. What's your average profit on a deal?
Right now it's 11,000.
All right, so $11,000.
Yeah.
Now, quick question for everybody listening. Would you invest $700 on a high end to make $11,000 back?
It's no brainer.
No brainer. I'm trying to figure out how many times can I spend $700 to get $11,000 over and over and over again. That's the thought process that you need as a business owner. If you're not thinking that way, you're thinking way too small. You probably shouldn't be in a business in the first place. And that's just being real. So we're trying to give you actionable steps here. Chris is obviously an expert with what he does. Fantastic. He has his own podcast as well, by the way, Escaping the Newbie Zone.
Yep.
Be sure to check that out. But more importantly, take the information that he's providing for you on platforms like this and do something with it. You heard it in my first podcast episode. If you don't do something, you're never going to get anywhere. So you got the vehicle, you have the drive, you got to put the car in drive and get it moving. You got to press that gas. Get out there and do something. So Chris, I know we've been on for a while.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you providing great content today. And we appreciate you providing action steps. Actionable content is more important than basic content, right? So if you had to give a word of advice to our listeners today, those of you just getting started, even if you've been in the business for a while and you're trying to figure out, what's happening in the market, where's the next deal going to come from? What are those words of advice what are some things that you would tell our listeners that are going through these things at the moment?
So I would tell them that, with this business, there are going to come challenges. The most important thing is understanding, like we've been talking, this whole time, is about, taking action, and more importantly, strengthening your mindset.
Powerful.
The thing that a lot of people don't share sometimes, we talk about a lot of action and things like that, but another action that must be taken is uplifting your mind, because the challenges that you're going to face that may not even necessarily be real estate related. There's going to be some challenges of even thinking that you were worthy of making $11,000, right? You come from working, $15 an hour at a job, and your paychecks for the month is no more than $4,000 a month. 11 grand might seem like that's just out of reach for you. So the biggest thing is, on your journey on this real estate, being an investor, entrepreneur, is uplifting your mind to think bigger. Our mind is like a box, and however big that box is, when stuff gets overflown, right, it falls out the box. So if your mindset and capacity is only able to handle small problems and only make $4,000 a month, even if you happen to make $11,000 a month on doing a deal, one, you may not be able to repeat the process because you don't believe it, because you don't even know how you did it the first time. Or two, you're going to blow the money because you're not worthy in your mind of having that type of money. So on your journey, keep elevating your mind. This is done by reading books. This is done by podcasts. This is done by changing your circle. Me and Jamel have been friends for so long. We help each other. We grow together, right? Because we are two people that are super invested in growing our businesses and our minds.
That's right.
So,
and just to add to that, we don't have that crab in a box mentality. Crabs try to pull each other back down, where we're trying to offer helping hands to not only ourselves, but to everyone else.
Right.
Well, but we help each other in moving forward in our businesses. So get out of the crab in a box mentality, friends.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, that crab in a box mentality, guys, is not gonna help anybody. So if you have anybody around you that is trying to pull you back, you got to get out of that box. Period. Got
to. And some of them, it's sad. Some of them is your friends and family.
Yep. It's true, man. 100% true. So, sometimes people need to see you. They'll doubt you until they see you winning. And once you start winning, then they'll support you. It's unfortunate. That's just the way it works, though.
Yeah.
So
I think there was a meme that was like, friends won't support you until strangers celebrate. Friends won't celebrate you until strangers. So it was something about basically like
strangers. Yeah, I like that, man.
Yeah, what I'm saying? Until
friends
strangers
support you,
that's when the friends will start supporting you.
I like that.
It's crazy, but that's how it is. You sometimes they just. And so just understand, for anybody that's listening to this, maybe you got a significant other. Maybe you have your mom, your brother, your uncle. Maybe you got some of your best friends you grew up in high school with, elementary school. They will doubt you. And it's not about doubting you. It's more of they don't think themselves they can do it. So they're trying to place their disbelief onto you because they don't want you to fail, because they don't believe that they could do it.
Also, right along with that, and I've experienced this myself, sometimes people are watching and you just don't know it. And then once you they think you strike gold, they come out. They've been sometimes they've been supporting you all along. They've been rooting for you all along. So what you do is important, because always remember, you got people watching you, whether you know it or not. I can't tell you how many people I personally grew up with, and they contact me on social media or something like that, and they just express how happy they are and how ecstatic they are because they saw it coming.
Right.
So sometimes you have people rooting for you. They may not say nothing to you about it, but they're rooting for you silently, wanting you to win. Even the well-meaning people who may, at the end of the day, they may say something like, maybe they have that crab in the box mentality, or it seems that way. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe they just want to protect you from harm. But sometimes you have to get hurt in order to heal faster, in order to get to where you want to be, right? So sometimes you have people silently rooting for you, and you'd be surprised. It happened to me.
And just to add on to that, Jamel, another thing too, because me and you are fathers, right?
Yep.
We can't go expect our daughters to go do something and be great if we aren't ourselves.
Wow, man, powerful.
Right. So the people that's looking at us are our kids.
That's right.
So we have to, be great. We have to set the example. Yep. Anybody listening that has kids, you can relate to this, because I can't look my daughter in her eyes and tell her, hey, I need you to go all the way. I need you to get a degree in college, right? Or start this business. But yet I was failed to go out and be that person myself.
You'd be a hypocrite.
They ain't gonna listen to you.
That's right. Powerful, powerful call, man. Powerful, powerful stuff. Even far and beyond the simplicities of real estate investing and a step-by-step process, just offering real life information, genuine information, man. We really appreciate having you this week on this podcast. If our listeners wanted to get in contact with you or see what you got going on, where should they go?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the best thing I would tell people, connect with me on Instagram at Detroit Mogul. If you Google me, I'll come up. I do have like a free little web training, but if anybody is listening, like I said, just follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Chris Bruce. You can connect with me on there.
Chris Bruce, everybody, we really appreciate having you today. Once again, it's been a real pleasure, man. Guys, get out there and do something with this information that Chris has willingly provided for you on today's call. And I'm telling you, if you just get started with doing something, there's no way you can't make some type of progress. Just get out there and do. Don't think about it. Just do it.
Absolutely.
Chris, man, it's been a real pleasure. And I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Thanks. Take care.